Dr. Michael Williams, Dean of Mount Carmel Schools and Secretary of the Action Committee, joins us. Dr. Williams, we have Sneha Mehta here, Principal of Ramjas Nursery Primary School. She says that these guidelines are fantastic. They're going to help students in the neighborhood, in the radius of 6 kilometers. Why do you seem to suggest that these guidelines are arbitrary, they're against schools, school management?
Baruch, the whole issue goes down to the autonomy of schools. That is the crux, that is the heart of the matter over here. The government has failed in providing quality education to the Indian student. It is the private sector that has been doing it for many, many years. And we've been doing it very well. In fact, the Indian schooling system is one of the most respected, but not the government schools. This concept of neighborhood schools, as pronounced in the RTE by the government, was the mandate for them to create 3,000 schools across India so that students can walk across and have schools in their neighborhood. The confusion here is because a school, a private school, is in a neighborhood, it is being considered a neighborhood school. It is not so. We are still private schools. The neighborhood school, as defined in the RTE, has to be made by the government. Yesterday, the Directorate of Education, in an article in the newspaper, had said that they have failed in it. There are 2 lakh students in Delhi who will not have seats because DDA has not allotted land to the government to build these neighborhood schools. So because the government is falling short, it cannot be that every single time private schools, their autonomy gets sacrificed and all the burden comes on us at such a short time. No parent has been upset with this point system so far. Nobody has gone and complained. It has been working fairly well, considering that 2 lakh students will not get seats. Understand that. Why it has happened now like this, I don't know. What was the rush? What was the need? Why none of our schools were taken into consultation? Why the educationists involved in the private sector who are being affected, their view was not taken, I don't know.
Okay, Sneha Mehta, this is a point that has been raised by many schools across Delhi, especially private. We're talking about private schools at this point. And they are saying that this has been arbitrary. They weren't consulted. They weren't looked at. This is the responsibility of the government. And like Dr. Williams is also saying at this point, also the other point is, what happens to parents of kids, or rather to the children who are not within the 6 kilometer radius and perhaps don't have schools of a certain merit that they would want to go to? What happens to them?
Ma'am, this is the same problem we had been facing for the last so many years, because all the schools have not been situated that way. In some areas there are many schools and in some areas there are no schools. And especially I'm talking about Anand Parvat place, where all the...
So I need to understand, do you agree with these guidelines or you don't agree with these guidelines?
I agree. The only thing is that government has taken this step in a haste, and especially when the schools are not there and number of children is much higher. That's the main problem. The parents are also facing a problem. If we start having the children, sending our children to the government, like neighborhood schools, I think this saves a lot of time of the children, especially. They don't have to commute so much. They'll be much closer to their houses and the parents will be able to devote so much of time.
Okay, Dr. Williams, another criticism or argument that has been put forth is that minority-aided schools have also come under these new guidelines. Now, there has been a criticism of minority-aided schools that they do not want to bring in that 25% quota which has been kept for EVM families. How would you argue that point out, that minority-aided schools need to be kept out of these guidelines?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify, it's the minority unaided which have been kept out by the
unaided.
You see,
I beg your pardon, yes.
That's right. Article 30 of the Constitution of India has given minority schools the freedom to run, to manage, to set up, to administer education institutions of their choice. This is a constitutional guarantee, and therefore any order from any legislative branch cannot supersede a Supreme Court order. Please understand that. There is no way that any letter whereby they are able to add in the word unaided minority school does not automatically apply on us. We have a Supreme Court blanket injunction on all minority unaided schools that we don't fall under the ambit of the RTE. So that's first things first. Second, it is the minority unaided schools that for centuries have been providing quality education. As a matter of fact, the word convent educated is used here in India. Those describe minority schools. So please, we have been in the remotest parts of this country for the past 150, 200 years and have been doing our job fairly well. We don't need a government who has just decided 30, 40 years ago to start getting into education, to start describing and defining, considering the state of their own schools. In fact, they should come to schools like ours and learn from us and say, listen, how did you guys set up systems? How do you keep and train your teachers? How do you educate your students? How do you give them values?
No, but at the same time, Dr. Williams, at the same time, under the right to education, I agree that the government also has to do its job. But as far as as far as educational institutions, as far as schools are concerned, what about your contribution to making it better? A better environment, a better neighborhood for kids in your immediate neighborhood of your school? The question is being asked is about the responsibility of private schools as well.
Absolutely, and therefore I agree with that. Now all private schools are required to have 25% free ship as under the RTE Act. All right, let's understand that. So private schools are doing that. When it comes to minority unaided schools specifically, we are clear of the ambit. Why? Because when the Chief Justice of India read out his judgment, he himself very clearly said, I am a product of a minority, Christian minority school, and I know the contribution they have been making to education. I don't need to tell these schools what they have to do.
Right.
To this day, Maruk, most Christian schools give preference to the poor, to the deserving candidate who does not have the options of filling up any other quotas. Those are the people that we cater to. Our schools are all over, whether they're from Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh to New Delhi and Mumbai. Everywhere you find minority unaided schools doing their job pretty well.
Okay. I'm going to leave it on that note. It is clearly a huge debate whether it helps young children or not, whether it is unfair to the schools, both the private schools as well as the minority unaided schools in the capital. But clearly it is something that the private schools are going to fight against. That is the sense that is coming from the school associations, that they are going to appeal, possibly even go to court against the guidelines that have been put forth by the Lieutenant Governor. On that note, Dr. Michael Williams, Sneha Mehta and Aditya Anand Narayan, thank you so much for joining us.